So what I decided for myself was like, if you work for free, this shouldn't be too big of a project, because then it's less time commitment and it's also more likely to actually be finished.
What's new in filmmaking technology this week? News, reviews, education, insights, opinions, and ideas from the CineD newsroom with Nino and Johnnie Bahiri. This is Focus Check, the weekly Cinetech podcast.
Welcome to this special episode of CineD Focus Check, our weekly podcast. Hi, Johnny.
Hi, Nino. How are you?
Good. And today I wanted to talk about something different. Actually, not talk about gear this week, but just talk about something that I think affects a lot of people in our audience. Now, as filmmakers, videographers, content creators, whatever you call yourself, I think a lot of us are very often asked to work for free,
What? What do you mean work for free?
You know how it is. Like, can you shoot this music video for me? Can you shoot for a spec? What I mean? There's this huge chance, there's this great chance to work with this amazing artist or whatever.
We'll make you famous. We'll make you famous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you do this one job for me for free or for us for free, we have a lot of other jobs for you and all that kind of stuff.
Let me ask you. So with this three working thing, you go to the supermarket and then what? What do you do with this? How can you buy in the supermarket food with the free promise?
With portfolio.
I thought you have a new solution for that.
No, I just wanted to talk about this subject because it's something I don't think there's an easy answer to that. I mean, the immediate reaction would be no, because why should you work for free? Like you said, you have to put food on the table. I mean, why should you do this? And nobody would ask the plumber to fix your toilet for free, right? You would never do that. He even if he needs it for his portfolio of plumbing toilets.
We promise you so much work in the future.
Exactly.
The whole building if you do this for free.
But that's the thing, right? I think there is a lot of ways to differentiate. And I just wanted to have a conversation about this and also talk from our own experiences. Now, I think there's not an easy answer to that because, of course, it's difficult if you're starting out.
It depends where you are.
It's very it's very hard actually to get into this industry. Even if you have an education that's like a formal education, or even if you don't, it doesn't matter. At some point, you need to start working in the field. And in my opinion, you only learn to become a good storyteller, a good filmmaker, a good DP, whatever you are, director, it doesn't matter. You only become this by working. And it's not easy because a lot of our work is dependent on teamwork. So you kind of need to be good with people. You need to get into the grind. So where do you start? Where did you start? I mean, were you paid on the first time you held a camera?
Well, I have to say, I was working first as a freelance for the country, how do you call it? The official broadcaster, the government broadcaster. That's how I started, as a freelance. And since the money was not that great at that time, but I knew that the promise here would be a contract.
But you didn't start as a shooter, no?
No, as assistant. That was my best school ever. And I think that's fine. That's why one of the reasons we talked about before, if to go to school or not and learn, but that's a different story. But since the money was not that great, I really had to do more. And to do more meant to start to learn editing. And at that time, it was only Premiere version 4?
Not Pro,
No Pro. That was really early days of everything. So I had to teach myself how to edit and then actually practice on filming, doing small jobs. Yeah, some of those were free, but consciously I allowed it. I wanted. But the upgrade for me was to move from the local currency, whatever, let's say 100, whatever, and at some point to divert it to dollars, which was maybe 3 times more. So when I felt confident enough and I felt good enough, so I moved from the local currency to dollars, and then I literally earned more. Yeah. So and that's how I started. I don't know how you started, and of course it doesn't fully answer your question if I did things for free, because I did, and it was always knowingly, and I think it's very much depending where you are in your career, but that should not be the rule of thumbs in general. So how did you start? And then we move like where we are now, and because it's also legit to do things for free.
I always had this rule that I came up quite early where I was like, okay, it's okay to work for free if the experience is worth it, that will advance me in a sense that I will learn new stuff that will help me down the line.
Not based on what they promised you. Yeah, like
exactly. Or it will result in a product that I'm proud of for whatever reason, that is not commercial or whatever, but it's something that I can put on my portfolio, or it is a chance to work with somebody that I really admire. And then, and it's a project that has a really like a social issue or something that I support, where I'm willing to do that, with a big caveat that it's not in any way a corporate or commercial project where a company actually uses this as an ad or whatever, or a corporate film to earn money with it. So I would, that was always my rule, to not work for free on those things. And I also recommend this to anybody. Like if you are asked to work for free on something where somebody gets paid,
eventually somebody makes the money on your back.
If somebody makes money on this, even if, if there's a big actor or a production company or whatever, if they make money, you should make money. If nobody makes money on something, it's fine, because then it could be a student film, could be a short film, it could be a music video that you just do for fun, because you can experiment and you can be innovative with your, the look or the camera, whatever or the story, and learn something. I always like to do the free projects that I like to do to learn. The problem with those free things is that very often there's no pressure behind them, right? Because people in the crew will always prioritize paid projects. So if you start on a free project that is taking longer than 1 or 2 days, it will mean that this will be sacrificed every second as soon as somebody from the crew will have a paid job, which means those unpaid things often never get finished. And that's just something and I've been burned by this, I've been, and that was already when I was, well into my career. I worked on a documentary, for example, that was a really, really interesting issue. We did a documentary shoot for an American production about a Holocaust survivor who, for the first time, who emigrated to America during the war, or actually after the war. He was in basically all the concentration camps and survived them. And then but a very, very positive man. And then he came back to Europe to actually visit those places now, first time as an old man. And we documented that. And I was asked by a, big DP from Hollywood who invited me to this project. And that's why I wanted to do it, because I wanted to work with him. And, but of course, always thinking that this would be a cool finished project. I think we shot this 10 years ago, or almost 10 years ago, and it's never been finished. And it's simply never been, and I can't blame anybody, but it's
it's also not fair for the protagonist, actually.
He doesn't live anymore. Yeah. I mean, and I know that we captured some amazing stuff, and he was such an interesting, very inspirational, positive man. And I know that the people behind this want to finish it, but for some reason, and I don't know the reasons, has never been finished. And it's a shame. It's just a shame. And this is simply all of the people who worked on this work in the industry. Some have very good jobs also in Hollywood and so on. Yeah. And they've always had to prioritize the paid jobs. That's my guess. But that's a shame. This has never been finished. I still enjoyed working on it. I still, all the people I met, it's been a very inspirational project, but it's never been finished. Another occasion, I shot and I'm happy to share this, I shot a full documentary with David Hasselhoff, the Knight Rider Baywatch guy, and it was really interesting.
He's very big in Austria, by the way, just with
That's funny, guys. Yeah. And but it was also American production, and this also was never finished because, this was something that was more like a passion project from the director, and that for some reason, I don't want to go into details, but they ended up having disagreement with the the protagonist with the producer, and which meant that the project would never be finished. And it's also one of those projects where you've not been paid for this. and there was this with this project. The idea was that people will be paid because they made this on their own dime. And people would be paid once they sell it to a broadcaster. And of course that never happened because it fell apart. And it's like, it left everybody with like, not great. Although everybody involved was nice. But these are the things, especially on longer unpaid projects. There's a lot of things that, first of all, paid projects always come first for anybody else. So that means that the likelihood of an unpaid project ever being finished is much smaller. So what I decided for myself was if you work for free, it can be something like this, but this shouldn't be too big of a project because then it's less time commitment and it's also more likely to actually be finished. Meaning like if you do a music video, if you do a short film, if it's limited in time, it's easier to sacrifice 3 days than 20 days. It's simple as that. And you will be, you will, even if that falls through for some reason, it's not as big of a loss as it was, and then you still have the experience, of course. And so
well, I guess everybody kind of is setting up his own rules. For example, I did seldomly any weddings, for example. So if I'm being asked and I know that it can be as a present, that's also kind of tricky because usually you do this to people that you really like. But then I did 1 or 2 paid weddings. I will do divorces for free, but not weddings. No, but seriously speaking, it's I don't do stuff for free. Like unless I have the interest either to learn or simply the joy of doing this. I think we are in a position now that we can really choose the work that we do. I understand if this is somebody who starts, but if there is anything, it's either full payment or free, because the in-between is the worst. And the worst is to kind of cut the branch you're sitting on and reduce the prices, because this is really a race to the bottom. That's amazing. And you can see this with a lot of the newcomers, which are actually very much welcomed, but maybe don't understand that when you try to cut a price, like to enter the field by cutting a price, you really devalue your own work. And I'm not talking even about your colleagues right now.
And you will never, with that client, be able to raise it.
Exactly. So anyone who is listening and think about how can I enter or what should I do in order to enter this field, please think 2 and 3 times before you actually cut the price, because that means, people are paying for your talent and sometimes even for equipment. That's fine. But if you already start low, let's say if the average, I don't know, it's between $500 to $700 a day for a cameraman in many countries, and you say, hey, I'll be a smart ass, I'll do this for $300. So as you said, you'll never be able to recover from that price. But also, that means that your talent and work, what do they worth? So
I agree.
This is something that I think we should note here.
I agree. I also never would compromise on the day rate, which means your work. And I very much always differentiated. I think you didn't, but not so much. But I always differentiated between what is my work and what is the gear that I bring. Because, of course, we all use different gear for different jobs. And I always discouraged people to give one sum, like a lump sum for gear and your work, because it means that you would tend to take more gear than the client would be willing to pay for. Now, I always differentiate. I never compromised on the day rate. This is something you should never discount. And it doesn't matter how many shooting days they are, that should stick. You should not discount that. Because like you said, you would cut the branch you're sitting on. But with the gear, it very much depends on how many shooting days there are. Simply because if you're renting, like if the client would rent even from a rental house, there are, and you should look at that as a shooter, you should look at your local rental houses and how they discount. And usually it works this way, that there's a day price and then there's a price for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. And usually depends on where you are, but from around 1 week or 10 days, you pay half. So basically, if you at a rental house, if you rent a camera for 10 days, the client would pay what it would cost for 5 individual days. And you have to know this if you work with your own gear. Because of course, what I always tried to do, I looked at the prices of a fairly priced local rental house. Local meaning depending on where I'm shooting. And then I would quote a similar price. Usually never lower, but usually the same or a little bit higher, but not undercut those prices. So to not, just be paid a fair value for the gear that I bring, but also not undercut that price too much. Maybe, let's just slightly, because then they would have a motivation to hire the gear with you, but not too much because you would, cut your own flesh and have the same kind of rebate structure.
But also here there's a little trick, because at the end of the day, you should really choose the equipment you want to buy with the thinking that if you are doing a job for somebody and there's a possibility for them to also rent your gear, you have to do your homework. Because in some countries, some manufacturers are more popular than others. That's one thing. Or if the production or potential production companies don't really care about the equipment, they just want quality. Few episodes before, we talked about the Canon EOS C80 as a good example, because here you're not coming with a mirrorless camera to set, which personally I don't mind. I mean, I did it many times because again, people are paying for my talent, let's say, but not for it's not. They should rely on me that if I come with a mirrorless camera, I know what I'm doing with it and the end result will be fine. But I'm just saying for some production companies, it's a no-go to come with a mirrorless camera. So the next best thing is a camera like the EOS C80, because that already looks a bit beefed up. It looks like more professional, let's say. So some production companies can really digest this. So you can buy something that has a high quality, but also you don't break the bank in order to buy it. So you make yourself a small kit, which is very cost effective. And this kit, you can, as you said, use the method that you just outlined, how to budget the daily rate or whatever. So you can cover the cost of that equipment relatively fast and hopefully also earn on it. Because at the end of the day, if you buy an equipment as a personal shooter, if you buy an equipment which is too expensive, then you're risking very quickly there will be the next best thing coming, the value will go down and so on, and maybe it will not even be requested. And
I'm strongly advising against using a higher end camera that nobody asked for on a job, because the people, like the client, will get used to it. I know people who, we've talked about the fact that it's becoming more and more difficult to justify buying expensive cameras for many jobs, unless you're really doing high-end commercials and stuff. But it's because of the quality that you get for cameras that cost, 5,000-6,000 already. It's going to be very difficult to justify anything above 10,000 unless you really have a very specific application. But if you do turn up with a camera, I know a colleague actually who upgraded from an FX9 to a Burano simply because he wanted the additional stuff that it can do. But he told me nobody's paying for it. I think that's the wrong move, because it means that he will turn up with that camera on those shoots. And I know he does a lot of regular things like TV things for like regular TV series, weekly stuff. But the client, the producers will get used to this.
But they will not pay extra.
They will never pay extra for this because they don't ask for it. It's his convenience. Of course, it's his choice. But what he ends up doing is making life more difficult for other people who are working on other productions for those production companies that, need to justify the expense of those same cameras for other productions, because the producer will just say, well, this guy, he's bringing it for free, or he's charging me what the cheaper camera costs. Why can't you do that? So I really advise against that kind of stuff. But we're diverting a little bit from the subject. I mean, it's still part of it, but I wanted to talk more about, should you work for free? And like I said, like you said, actually, I agree. It's either full price or it's free. And if you lower the price, in my experience, the clients that start with wanting a discount on everything when they contact you are going to be the ones that are most difficult ones. And, you know, the ones that don't start, that actually start with the content and talk about the production before they talk about price are the easier ones. Than the other ones that contact you and say, well, I need whatever, this corporate film, but I only have whatever, 500 euros, or it doesn't matter. Can you do this and this and this and this and do all the editing and stuff? Those are the difficult ones, and try to stay away from them. Quote them full price. And if they don't agree, you know, like even if it's a new client, also, you know, be careful. Be careful in the sense that you might want to ask for an advance, especially if it's a client from another country, which is going to be hard to get hold of if they don't pay. So those are a lot of things that, but yeah, either work full price or work for free, and only work for free if it's a non-commercial project where nobody earns money and if it's for your own experience. One thing that I really enjoyed doing when I was younger, when I was just out of university and I didn't have any contact, but I needed kind of get to know people in the industry. And I'm not talking about only directors. I also talk about assistants and sound people and so on. What I ended up doing is doing a lot of those short film contests, which have a very defined time, and I love doing them. There's one in Austria that's called Instant36. It's been around for a long time, and I did this, I think, a long time ago when after I finished university, I contacted a few people that I didn't really know and asked them, do you want to take part with me in this? And they always announce, a lot of those contests announce the subject, like what the film has to be about. And then it's called Instant36 because you have 36 hours to complete it. And there's others that I did a documentary thing in 48 hours, an international one, and some are 24 hours. And it's crazy stress, but it's actually, you know, it's forcing you to complete the project in this time frame. If you don't manage to complete it in this time, you can't submit it. But it means it's a very defined time frame. You can set it aside. You know it's a free project, but I kind of have the guarantee that I'm going to finish it, because if I'm not finishing it, it's worthless. So, you know, it's done after that. And it's not something that will be dragged on forever, because like I said before, with free projects, people like to prioritize the paid work. So you will need to finish it in your team. And the cool thing is about this, if you find a few people that are enthusiastic about this, you will really get to know them in a production environment. And I ended up working with a lot of those people that I've met on those projects in professional, that I ended up either I worked for them or they are hired, you know, somebody as an assistant or as another shooter, because you know how they work, but you experimented on something which you didn't risk anything. Like you didn't risk a paid client project, you know, like, because that's also difficult, because there's not really a way. I mean, what's our industry is really missing is kind of a mentorship program in a way, right? Where you can have, like, just as somebody who's starting out, to sit, I think a lot of people would like to sit on the sidelines and just watch you work in order to know the set reality. Internships, I really recommend internships. Like if you manage to get an internship, if you're starting out in our industry, especially on a set, it's absolutely worth it, as long as you can make sure. I mean, it's difficult sometimes because, of course, the production company will use you as a PA, and then you will maybe end up standing on a street 2 kilometers from the set, just, you know, blocking it and not really be on the set. But I mean, that's something you need to risk, because you will get the experience, you will get to know the people. But an easier way to experiment with this, to find like-minded people to take part in those competitions, is something I can really recommend. And that's, of course, you work for free on those. We are
sharing our experience as shooters, but we, of course, have to think that there are soundmen, editors, and other professions in this industry. And I think editing, because we are both doing editing, that's also a very good example when we talked about a designated time frame. Because if you do a job for free while editing, for example, an editing job, you are risking the feedback from the client for changes will, if you have in your mind that, it's all going to be fine, I'm going to finish the job, I'm going to submit it, he or she going to be happy, and then suddenly, can you just change this? Can you just change this? You'll find out that this free project is eating your time, and it's not even worth the free or the experience actually. So that those things, sometimes you really have to take it one step further and even put it on a kind of a mini contract or something that it's clear that the service that you are giving, to what extent it goes, and maybe beyond that, it's additional money, or you just need to hand it over to somebody else because you will not be able to do more than one or two changes for the editing, for example.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's something that you need to define when you are sending a proposal. How many rounds of changes are included? And that I can't emphasize this enough. I mean, I've also learned it the hard way. But usually what I do, I say, if there is no other request, I will say 1 round of changes and 1 additional round of minor adjustments. Meaning, in theory, the client could say, for the first change, this edit is complete crap, redo it. Then I would have to start from scratch, which is fine, because there's 1 included, in theory. And the second one would just be minor adjustments, meaning you
adjust the title.
The lower third typo, and maybe change the music or something. Of course, that everything is it's still a fine line, but this needs to be defined beforehand, because like you said, I mean, editing is exactly where this is. I mean, if you have, especially I find this with corporate clients, if there's a lot of people involved, everybody seems to be important and needs to justify their position. You have to put yourself in the mind of the client. And if you are in one of those, you have a corporate client, and a good hint at this could be trouble is when there's like 5 people in CC of an email that you've never heard of. You know what I mean? It's like, and then
everybody has to say. Everybody needs to say something.
Karen from the second row will email you at some point that you never heard from, that she wants, a title changed on frame 727 on the 5th revision.
So you know what I'm doing? I'm serious. When I sense, or when I used to sense that that's what the direction is going to, I will really ask to know whom in this production company, whom am I dealing with? One person. The last thing you want to start is getting different emails from different people, and you never know how well or not they are synchronized among themselves. So try to talk to one person and try to make it a decision maker, because otherwise it's going to drive you crazy.
Yeah. Either that, or, just be clear. Okay, now we have surpassed this 1 change and this 1 minor adjustment, and everything I do from here on out, I'm going to charge by the hour for editing, and it's costing this. And surprisingly, most of those people will suddenly be able to figure their stuff out very quickly and actually tell you what they need. Yeah. And if they don't, you earn a lot more money. So, But
anyway, please, guys, respect yourself, respect what you're doing, choose the free jobs that you're doing cleverly, see where is the benefit for you, what you can gain from a free job. Otherwise, don't be shy. Your worth, it's almost like what? When you're going to a doctor, do you expect him to treat you for free? Not really. I mean, it's like, it's a profession. We are professional people, and we should be expected to pay for what we do and for our talent.
And usually I'm saying usually because of course there might be some exceptions, but usually there's no half days, right? There is a shooting day.
Absolutely.
Charge for a shooting day, because if you charge you will have clients that ask you, because they're used to paying a designer or whatever by the hour. In reality,
no half days.
Half days are...
What are you going to do in the rest of the day?
Exactly. What are you going to do with the rest of the day? Of course, there are exceptions to this. Like if, for example, let's say you're shooting a press conference and this is 1.5 hours there, and they're paying you for shooting it and editing it. Of course, I mean, you can do this in one day because it's very defined. I would make an exception here. I would not charge an extra editing day or something like that unless I know, because it's very straightforward and I know what it is. But in reality, even if a shoot is scheduled to be only 3 hours long, there's the preparation, there's the loading of the gear, there's driving there, driving back. It usually takes up at least 5-6 hours if you're in a city. And anything above 4 hours should definitely be treated as a full day. And I find it very rare that anything can actually last less than that. It's
the same for the traveling days, because sometimes production houses will ask you to go places for free on your expense in the sense of time. I'm not talking about they might pay the train, car, petrol, whatever, but this is a working day at the end.
Usually the industry norm is to charge half a working day for a travel day. Nobody will pay you a full working day just for traveling. Everywhere I know is half a day is what you charge for that, and it doesn't actually. If you're lucky, if you can decide your own schedule, you usually drive there in the evening if it's like 2-3 hours away, so it's not actually consuming your full day. But I get your point. Of course, it's time.
Yeah.
And it should be compensated for, and not just money for petrol. Also, in different countries, there is actually a fixed sum that you are charging per kilometer or mile for the travel of your car, and it's usually not just reimbursing you for the cost of the petrol, but also the usage of your car, which you kind of like. Otherwise, you would, you would have to. If you didn't have a car, you would have to rent one, which is much more expensive. So in the end, I think here in Austria, it's going to be like 50 euro cents per kilometer soon. It was 42 until now, and different countries with different rules. But this is something you should stick to if you use your car, stuff like that. And that also, of course, by the way, free projects, this has to be paid because you have expenses. If you are driving somewhere, you should be paid for the driving cost. Obviously, you should not end up paying for a project that you're working on for free. At least that has to be covered. And also, if you're the one to, sometimes if you make a short film and ask people to work for free, there's this one rule to keep people happy. If they work for free, feed them. Just give enough food and drinks at all times. There's nothing worse than having hungry people on set, because they will perform horribly and they will be understandably very angry.
Just eat you.
They will eat you alive.
Yeah.
You just make sure that there's food, good food, enough food and snacks on set, and not just junk food. Healthy stuff, also junk food, that's fine. Also some sweet stuff, of course, to get an energy boost. But also feed them with warm food in lunchtime and so on. And that will make day and night difference if you ask people to work for free, if you provide them that and give them the respect of feeding them, because I've seen this also in the past where it's crazy on student shoots and they don't even think about this stuff. And then they just, buy, some, crisps at the supermarket and expect everybody, and they're gone after 5 minutes and everybody's hangry. So that's not a way to, you will not get a good performance out of that. Yeah.
Good. Guys, I think it's very important if you try to share with us your experience. We'll be very happy to hear how you're dealing with free stuff versus paid stuff. If you have some horror stories or great stories, if you lost some really good friendship because you did something for free and then your friend was not happy with that or didn't feed you well, just share with us. We'll be very happy to hear.
Yeah, I think that's a very important topic. And I think in the future, we'll probably do other episodes about paying, like getting paid, what to charge, how to charge. There's a lot to say about this. But yeah, like Johnny said, we were very interested in your experiences. Also, positive and negative experiences. Please let us know in the comments below or email us at podcast@cined.com. We can cover them in the next episode. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you, guys.
And please don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast. Give us a good rating. Leave a comment. Leave a, whatever rating. And also YouTube, everywhere.
Thumbs up.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.